Virgo, justice will be served for something done behind your back. The universe has already acted. You've spent the last few days trying to figure out who did it, reconstructing the scene, searching for the detail that would explain the pain, going through every conversation looking for proof that someone, at some point, acted behind your back. And perhaps you don't know this yet. The case was already closed before you even opened the investigation. While you were looking for the culprit, the universe had already resolved everything, without asking your permission, without waiting for your verdict. This bothers you, doesn't it? Because Virgos don't like unresolved issues. You're the type who keeps every emotional receipt in an internal drawer, catalogued by date and by pain. That comment from 2019, that broken promise, that silence that meant more than any word. You keep all of this with almost professional precision, as if one day you might need to present the evidence to someone. But to whom exactly? No one asked for this evidence. No one but yourself knows this file exists. And that's where things get uncomfortable. You've unknowingly built an entire courtroom inside your chest, an empty courtroom where the judge, the prosecution, and the defendant are all the same person. You sit there alone every night, reviewing the case, analyzing whether the anger you feel is justified, analyzing whether the forgiveness you haven't yet granted is selfishness or wisdom, analyzing whether the person who hurt you deserves to be judged or simply forgotten. And the verdict never comes because you didn't build this courtroom to condemn anyone. You built it to feel in control of a pain that deep down was never under your control. This is the mechanism that no one taught you to name. Your vigilance isn't coldness, it's protection. Every time you overanalyze a situation, every time you reconstruct a conversation 10 times in your head, you're not being hard on yourself by accident. You're trying to avoid being caught off guard again. It's an internal alarm system that never turns off, because turning it off, for you, has always seemed dangerous. If you stop watching for a second, someone might act behind your back again. And this time you won't see it coming. Notice something. All this filing you keep, all this nightly surveillance, this private tribunal. There's a question you've never allowed yourself to calmly ask. What if the process already had an outcome? Written in a place your rational mind can't even reach, Virgo trusts evidence, trusts what can be measured, reviewed, double-checked. That's why it's so difficult to accept that there's a kind of accounting that doesn't pass through your hands, a scale that adjusts itself far from your supervision in the hours when you finally sleep. Think about the last time someone acted behind your back and months later, without you having done anything, that person's life began to fall apart on its own. You've seen this before. Every Virgo has seen this before. And yet when the pain is fresh, you forget. You go back to your guard. You go back to opening the file. You go back to sitting in the empty courtroom, as if this time it were different, as if this time the universe needed your help to do what it has always known how to do on its own. Perhaps the hardest part isn't discovering who did what. Perhaps the hardest part is admitting that you don't need to discover anything anymore. What if all this time the only pending investigation was within yourself, waiting for you to finally ask, what do I do now with this pain that has already been resolved somewhere that I, with all my attention, was never able to see? That question keeps circling around, doesn't it? The investigation you never closed, the verdict that never came, the relief you sought everywhere, but the only place that truly mattered, within yourself. It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book. The divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose isn't about finding fault. It's about something every Virgo recognizes in their body before understanding with their mind the difference between watching for injustice and finally trusting that it has already been dealt with. It's a mental attitude, not a ready-made formula. It teaches you to distinguish when your analysis is truly protecting you and when it's only trapping you in a tribunal that no longer needs to exist. For those who already build clarity in everything except within themselves, this book is the missing mirror. You're exactly at that point right now, still processing what you just heard, still feeling the weight of everything you've carried alone, your mind already searching for a safe place to settle this restlessness. This is the right moment, not in a week when life distracts you again and the file goes back to its usual drawer. The link is in the first pinned comment, but be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. And you, in the comments, what is the oldest piece of evidence you still keep in your personal files, awaiting a judgment that may have already happened without you? The truth is, while you were reviewing the process for the 100th time, something was already shifting on the other side, beyond your field of vision. There's a balance that doesn't ask permission to operate. It doesn't work during the day when you're alert, cataloging every suspicious gesture. It works in the early hours of the morning, behind the scenes of people's lives, adjusting consequences that no one planned. You've seen this before, even without wanting to admit it. That person who acted behind your back, who disappeared satisfied thinking they'd escaped unscathed. And months later, without you lifting a finger, their life began to crumble on its own, in a sequence of events that no one planned and that no one can properly explain. You called it coincidence, you called it luck, but a part of you, that precise and observant part that never switches off, knows how to recognize a pattern when it repeats itself, and that pattern always repeats itself. This puts you in an awkward position. What if the rebalancing is already underway right now, while you're still trying to prove, with evidence and arguments, something that the universe has already resolved in its own way, without asking for your approval, without consulting your method? Imagine an old-fashioned pharmacy scale, one of those with double pans, where each gram on one side needs an exact gram on the other for the pointer to finally stop in the center. You've been trained your whole life to be that scale, to weigh words before speaking, to weigh reactions before feeling, to weigh consequences before acting. And when someone breaks that balance behind your back, the immediate instinct is to step onto one of the pans yourself, trying to manually compensate for what you've unbalanced. But the scale that governs the real consequences of life isn't yours. It's bigger, older, and operates on a timescale that your analytical mind, trained for immediate results, has difficulty accepting. There's a scene that repeats itself, almost like a pre-written script. Someone acts in bad faith, reaps the benefits quickly, and disappears satisfied with their own achievement. And you're left there, alone, with a feeling of injustice gnawing at you, unaware that that person's clock has already started ticking, in a way that will only become apparent months later, in a form that doesn't even seem related to what they did to you. It's hard to accept, because there's no receipt. There's no documented proof, nothing you can file away. Just the pattern, silently repeating itself year after year whenever you pay enough attention to notice. Notice the weight you carry when you insist on taking justice into your own hands. It's not the weight of action, it's the weight of vigilance. It's the invisible anvil you lift every day, made of memories that refuse to retire. Every time you repeat the story to someone, every time you replay the argument in your head, trying to prove to yourself that your pain is legitimate, you're not processing, you're preventing the process from finishing. Justice, when it's true, doesn't need a permanent witness. It simply happens and follows its course, indifferent to who was watching. There's a question that bothers me more than any betrayal. How much longer do you intend to carry this anvil, just to prove in the end that it really was heavy? This self-adjusting balance, far from your supervision, is exactly the kind of discernment that the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose helps you develop within yourself. not as a magic formula, but as a daily practice of recognizing what has already been resolved and what still demands your real attention. For those who constantly analyze every detail of their own pain, this book is an invitation to use that same intelligence on something that finally brings peace and not more burden. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. There's a price that no one shows you at the time, but that you pay little by little without realizing it. It's the price of insisting on doing justice alone. Every extra analysis you do, every review of the conversation, every new theory about why that happened to you and not to someone else, is energy that comes from a limited place. Virgo has an almost superhuman capacity to sustain this effort for a long time without appearing tired on the outside. But inside, the wear and tear is real. And the cruelest part is that this effort in the end doesn't change the outcome. The scale has already adjusted what it needed to adjust. Your extra work only adjusts one thing: the size of the weight you carry alone, by choice, thinking it's an obligation. A blacksmith works the anvil to transform raw metal into a useful tool. But you're not using your anvil to forge anything new. You're just carrying it around, from conversation to conversation, from memory to memory, without ever hammering the piece until it becomes something else. That's the detail no one told you. The weight that hurts isn't the fact itself. It's the habit of revisiting the fact without transforming it. Every time you mentally reopen the case without getting anywhere new, you strengthen the wrong muscle, the muscle of vigilance, and weaken the right muscle, the muscle of trust. There's a silent trap in all of this. The more competent you are at noticing patterns of injustice, the easier it becomes to confuse noticing with needing to act. Not every perception requires a response from you. Some perceptions only require witnessing, and then rest. Imagine an archivist working in an old library, cataloging each document with almost religious care. This archivist knows exactly where each paper is kept, on which shelf, in which box, under which code. But he is never called upon to judge the content of the documents he keeps. His talent is to preserve, not to condemn. You have learned to do both at the same time, without realizing that no one asked for the second part. Preserving the memory of what happened is wisdom. Insisting on judging it forever is an extra task you have unnecessarily assigned yourself. There's a difference between discernment and persistent distrust, and it's quite likely that no one has ever taught you that difference. Discernment observes, learns, and lets go. Persistent distrust observes, learns, and continues watching forever, even after the danger has passed. One protects you. The other imprisons you within your own talent for perceiving everything. What if, for a moment, you allowed the most precise and observant part of you to rest, just to see what remains when vigilance ceases? This difference between discernment and constant distrust is precisely what the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose helps you see clearly. It's the tool for those who are tired of keeping track of everything alone and want to learn to truly distinguish when self-criticism protects and when it merely imprisons. No Virgo needs to carry the burden of deciding everything all the time alone. There's a lighter way to use that same precision to your advantage, and this book shows you where to begin. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. There is a river that never needs to force its way to the sea. It simply follows the path that the earth itself has opened for it, finding passage between the stones without wasting energy fighting against them. Have you ever tried to be that river? Or have you been all this time the stone that insists on staying exactly where it is, resisting the natural movement of things, just to prove that you were right not to trust? Letting go for Virgo has never felt like safety. It feels like carelessness. It feels like relinquishing control precisely when it seems most necessary. But there's a kind of power that only emerges when you stop judging the process and let it happen. It's not weakness. It's the most mature version of your precision, the kind that knows how to recognize when the work has already been done by other hands, on a different scale, in a time frame you don't control. Imagine a specific rock in the middle of a real river that resists the current for so long that the water ends up carving a groove in it, a deep mark, almost a scar on the rock itself. The water didn't stop flowing because of the rock. It's the rock that became marked by insisting on remaining still. It's an unsettling image because that's exactly what excessive vigilance does to you. It doesn't stop the world from following its course. It only imprints on you the wear and tear of resisting that course. There's a version of you that already knows how to do this. It's the same person who, in other areas of life, trusts the process, trusts that a recipe will work if you follow the method, trusts that a well-structured project will function, trusts the logic of things. The difficulty has never been trusting processes. It's been trusting a process that you can't audit, verify, or review line by line. But even that can be relearned, slowly, the way Virgo learns everything that really matters, in practice, one day at a time. An experienced musician knows that there comes a point when letting go of the instrument is as important as playing it. The silence between notes is not absence, it's part of the composition. You've been trying to fill every silence in your story with yet another analysis, another theory, another revision. But perhaps this time, the silence is exactly where the piece resolves itself, without needing your ruler to measure if it's right. Perhaps the question was never about who did what they did behind your back. Perhaps the real question is, what remains of you when you finally stop judging? Being the river and not the stone is a choice that is learned, and the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose exists precisely for that. To show you how to use your sensitivity and precision without having to control every curve of the path. For those who have already understood that letting go is not weakness, this book is the next natural step, the map of how to transform discernment into real peace without giving up who you are and without having to carry the weight of the entire world alone. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. What remains in the end is a new silent order, which only those who have carried so much weight can recognize. It's not the court order you built out of fear. It's the discreet order of those who understood that there is a higher intelligence taking care of the part of the work that was never their responsibility. Virgo was born to serve, to take care of the details, to polish what passes through their hands. But not everything needs to pass through their hands to be resolved correctly. Some things are resolved better precisely where you are not looking. There's an image that perhaps explains it better than any theory. Imagine a watchmaker who has spent his life adjusting tiny gears, training his eyes to see what no one else perceives. One day, this same watchmaker learns that there are clocks larger than time itself, mechanisms that don't fit on a workbench, that operate on a scale that no magnifying glass can reach. He doesn't lose his talent. He simply discovers where that talent no longer needs to be applied. And that, in essence, is what is being asked of you now. Not to stop perceiving, but simply to choose more wisely where to invest that rare perception you possess. Notice how, even now, a part of you still wants to review everything one more time. Find one last flaw in the reasoning, one last detail that proves letting your guard down is risky. This part is not your enemy. It's just tired of being caught off guard, and it will take time to learn that there is protection in resting as well, not just in vigilance. You can cherish this new feeling as you cherish everything else, carefully, attentively, without rushing to explain it to anyone. The justice you've been searching for already had an address, a date, its own way of unfolding, long before you even started the process. And perhaps the quietest beauty of being a Virgo lies precisely here, in the rare ability to one day, finally, trust. Not because you stopped noticing, but because you finally learned to distinguish what is yours to carry from what has long since been carefully resolved by hands greater than yours. The next time someone acts behind your back, you might still feel that old urge to open the files, to summon the court, to sound the alarm. And it's okay to feel that way. But now, along with that old instinct, there's a new, gentler question. What if, this time, you simply let the scales do their work, while you go back to taking care of your own life, your own art, your own well-cared-for silence? It is in this silence, after all, that Virgo has always found its truest form of power.